Oh, Sheila, I'm so sorry.
All right, so I'm going to encourage folks to fill in a little bit more. Don't be scared.
Oh my God.
Come up closer to the panelists if you're in the audience.
Oh. Yeah, or there.
Vincent, are you good to go then if I get started now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Soy de Guatemala también. ¿Sabes qué es dónde?
Take a picture of me sitting up. Can you take a picture of us sitting up? Yeah. I'm so sorry. Oh no, don't touch it.
Yeah, right. So.
Waiting on our one.
Yeah, she just ran to the bathroom. I don't have any. I would appreciate it. You got me. Joke around. How are you?
What's going on right now today?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, I bought like so many Halloween stuff. Actually, I must have bought like 8.
It's supposed to be live streaming it. I'm hoping no, but
And text Alex and
You're famous. Live stream.
I always wanted to be famous.
I mean, you deserve to be.
I reckon that might be the nicest thing you've ever said to me, dog.
I reckon it might be.
You're already famous.
Nobody was famous. Actually, no. Nobody wants that. No. I wouldn't want to deal with that.
okay. Well, thank you all for coming. Very excited to be hosting this amazing panel of folks here. So this is the second of what is 4 events as part of our Voter Education Week celebration to help students here at Northampton Community College be better educated voters and to learn about the power and importance of their vote. My name is Nikolai. I'm the Assistant Director in the Office of Student Life and Leadership Development, and I also oversee all of our NCC Votes programming, civic engagement, and nonpartisan efforts on campus to get students registered and get them to the polls. This program is also a part of our Emerging Student Leaders Institute program. So if you're participating to earn the Emerging Leader Certificate, please make sure that you sign in so I can track your attendance throughout each of the events throughout October. But I thank you for your participation as well. What we're going to do is we're going to have our panelists who are in person introduce each of themselves. And then we have one panelist that is joining us online on Zoom. So we'll start with Mary here and then go to the Zoom panelist.
Okay, sometimes I don't need the mic, but I'll use it. My name is Mary Erdman. I'm the president of the Lehigh County League of Women Voters. And although we do not have an active league in Northampton County, we have been doing things in Northampton County, just so you know, we're not forgetting about you. Most important right now is today, yesterday we handed in all the information for the Morning Call Voters Guide, which will come out mid-October. So look forward to that. And however I can help, I'm here to do that.
I'm not going to need the mic at all. Hi, my name is Maggie Corr. I am former Sergeant Corr, 15 years in the Army, and I'm recently retired. And I got so tired of being retired that I decided to come back to school to continue to give back. I don't feel like I've served enough, and I feel like I can do more. I'm here today to give a different perspective on the approach on how important our vote truly is.
Hi, my name is Morgan Flagg-Detweiler. I am the Director of Student Success and Belonging, also co-advisor of the Bethlehem Women's Club. And I am also one of the deputy coordinators for Title IX here on Bethlehem's NCC campus. I'm excited to be asked and honored to be asked to be one of these panelists. And I'm also a self-professed history nerd, which Cory just witnessed as I did a deep dive in my office on all of the timeline of women's voting and political participation.
Hi, I'm Cory Nordyke. I am the president of the Women's Club here at NCC Bethlehem. And I am a history nerd as well. So it was fun for me to go down that rabbit hole. I also am very honored to be part of this panel, as voting is very important. And I just feel that it's something that everybody needs to be educated on. So thank you for letting me be here today.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Sheila Alvarado. I am a mother, a daughter, and very active in my school community. I'm also a Lehigh County, newly elected Lehigh County Commissioner. First Latino period. There has not been a Latino elected into Lehigh County Commissioner. So we are super excited. I am honored to be here today, given my perspective as well to the importance of voting in our community in general, especially to our younger population. So thank you so much for having me. I am also a state representative's legislative assistant in Allentown. We're serving District 134. So a little bit of my knowledge is state government. I've also worked in the private sector, in the customer service field, and also in county government now. So thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all of you for being here today.
All right, and we'll let Leann, if you want to introduce yourself now.
Sure. Hi, I'm Leann Coca. I'm an English professor at Northampton Community College, and I have a couple, well, multiple pieces of my identity that intersect that make me, I think, kind of an interesting person to be on this panel at a younger age. So I live with multiple chronic disabilities, invisible disabilities and illnesses that are mostly unique to women. I have had an ectopic pregnancy that required medical intervention to save my life. I had to go through IVF to have my child, which ended up being a daughter. So I'm a mother of a girl who's 4, which is really important to me about voting. And I'm a daughter of a disabled veteran who has since passed. So all of those things kind of combine to create this intersectionality of identity that is really important to me, that women have a voice and stay in tune with what's going on in society and politics to make sure that we are heard and that our vote does matter and that we get out there and vote.
So, well, thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate your willingness to serve on this panel. I'm going to now bring up our NCC Votes Ambassador, Vincent, to lead us in the questions. Let's have some good conversation.
Vincent.
Hello.
Hello.
Nice to see you all here today. So I think we can just go from like one end of the table back every other question, you know. So let's start. What do you think the role of the USA is in protecting women in other countries? Explain why or why not. We can start with Sheila since the opposite of the
Sure. So many of us come from other countries. As myself, I was born in Puerto Rico. I was raised in Allentown in Lehigh County, but my family decided to move back to Puerto Rico, and I finished my college degree in Puerto Rico and moved back to Lehigh Valley as an adult. So our country should always protect women's rights. We should set an example for women that come to this country from other countries, and we can see every day in the news when other countries want to mirror what we're doing in the United States. So if we here in the US can continue to fight for women's rights, I would say when other women come to this country, we'll feel that the United States has their back and can support them and protect them. And many women before our time suffered in order for us women now and day to have the right to voice our opinion and to vote. So that's my take on why we should protect our women's rights.
We discussed this in the women's club, and one of the things was that we felt we really do need to prioritize the women at home, and we need to be taking care of the women at home first and making sure that we can be good role models in order to make sure that we can help everyone here in order to help everyone else for secondary. But that's a big thing, is that, you know, it is important for, you know, us to be role models for the rest of the world.
So I think I have a couple different perspectives on this. So I have a personal perspective, a perspective of discussions in the Women's Caucus. I'm also a member of the Women's Caucus here on campus, and the discussion with the Women's Club as one of the advisors. We definitely, I would echo the sentiments of both Sheila and Cory, that we do need to be an example for the world, and kind of that idea of putting your oxygen mask on first in order to help set that example. However, on a personal note, I do think that although we have a very far, you know, long road ahead of us and a good ways to go to gain true equality in the United States, I think that we do have some responsibility in other areas when we know that there are pretty extreme things happening to women around the world. I firstly think of things such as, you know, sex trafficking, female genital mutilation, or FGM happening in all corners of the world. And it becomes, you know, that strange thing in my brain that happens, that it's like those things are so terribly wrong. And I do feel a responsibility as a human to help with that, or to donate to charities and support organizations that are doing the legwork, the groundwork, and sort of thinking that, you know, the problems that we have here in the United States are, although serious, not as serious. So that one, it's a little bit difficult for me to just choose one side, because I see all of the necessary steps that need to be taken.
So one of the things we used to say in the Army is you set the standard, and the goal is to exceed your own standard. So once you set the bar for yourself, you are showing the world, and you are showing those around you what you're capable of at your best. Now, every time you go out in the world again, you exceed that standard. So us as women, the United States, let's start there. The United States sets the standard on the world stage. And it's up to us to be able to create that standard. So when we are making the changes necessary through our fight and through our persistence to create laws that benefit not just women, but humans, we are setting a standard of what's humane and what's not humane. We are setting a standard of how to behave. We are setting a standard of how to treat each other. And the better we get at that, because that has been a long and winding road, years and years and years of fighting, and we're still nowhere near that. But it is our goal as Americans to set and exceed that standard. And that's why the vote is so important, because if you don't, then you're not part of the solution. And that's the main goal here. We're all looking for a solution. We're not saying things without coming up with ideas to make them great, to make them happen. So because we set the standard, we need to be more proactive.
Okay, I guess I'm next. When I look at the question, what do you think the role of the US is? We have had a role since 1963 when John F. Kennedy founded the U.S. aid agency, the Agency for International Development, where we have a budget of about $42 billion. And what we do with that money is we go into countries that need us to be there. And what we do is help build them from the ground up. And as far as women, we look at women, do they have the education? Do they have the ability to get jobs, to get training? We look at other things like, do they have clean water? Do they have food? Do they have this? Do they have that? And in Biden's first year, as we see a growing trend towards authoritarianism, he decided to up the ante with the USAID agency, and he created a program called Democracy, Delivers, with the premise that when a country has democratic principles, they're more peaceful. And if you think about it, in some of these authoritarian countries, who are the first people to lose rights? Women. They lose education. They have to dress a certain way. They can't go out and have a job. They can't drive. So the United States uses this as a role, not that we hold money over people's head, but when we can get into a country and we can help these countries with basic food sustainability, with clean water, with education and rights and human rights for women and men, that makes us more able to have an impact. Now, I think this was a good move on this part, because we're looking at democracy as a pathway to more freedom for women. And I think our role, is continuing. I hope it does continue. And just to give a slightly different answer, yes, we are the country on the hill that has democracy, but we're not the only country where women have rights. The Nordic countries have rights that are they're built up by legislation that makes them guaranteed. We don't really have that yet in this country without an ERA, but people do look to America, and we are doing our job. We're doing it. We're working very hard in that respect. So hopefully that will continue depending on who wins the next election. This Democracy Delivers makes a lot of sense to me because it helps to guarantee women's human rights in these countries.
And Leann, apologies, should have gone first.
Oh, no, it's fine. So just actually that would transition really well. I'll just briefly piggyback off of what was just said, because it made me think of an article I read earlier this week. And it was about, as a parent, I was reading it, but it was about parenting, but it really sounded a lot like what we're talking about. So it talked about being the lighthouse parent instead of the helicopter parent. So helping your child advocate for themselves, showing them what that looks like, helping guide them through these difficult times, and being there, being the light for them, letting them know they can come back to you for support, but not swooping in and doing it for them, because that doesn't help them do it for themselves and be sustainable. So I think that that's really important, that we help provide the tools, the know-how, the ability to do that and help advocate for themselves. But we're not even the most progressive first world country in and of ourselves. Like was mentioned, the Nordic countries, I mean, there are women doing complete walkouts from work because they're not getting equal pay. We haven't done that, and our numbers are different. So we're very different, even our government, from some other countries that have more success in different areas. So I think it's really about like same team, women supporting women. I hear this a lot, but it's a cultural thing with us looking to each other and not seeing each other necessarily as someone who we have to tear down for us to get moved up for a few spots that are available to women, but for women to help, hold each other and pull them up the ladder with them and say, we can do this together. We can help you through this. We can help support you, because it's about humanity. So I just think it's really a humanitarian effort in general, and the US shouldn't be alone to try to do it. We can lean on some of our allies in that area.
Great. If anyone needs the mic, just let me know. It's here. So next question, Mary.
Okay.
What role do women play in shaping the future of democracy?
That's a question I would turn around to the audience and ask, especially some of our younger students. I brought along a t-shirt. I use this as a discussion piece from the League, and it says, "We're not your grandmother's League of Women Voters." And what I meant by that is, and it also has a QR code to register to vote, but what I meant by that is that we may not look like our grandmothers and how we dress, and we're not as formal in the League, But what did our grandmothers and our great grandmothers do? They fought for the right to vote. They fought for reproductive freedom. We have those things being challenged in many ways. What is the next generation going to do? You know, are you going to be involved? Are you going to register to vote? Are you going to speak up? Are you going to run for office? So that question I kind of turned back around to the audience as a challenge. What are you going to do about this? You know, there's a, you know, as far as we just talked about women's rights, some countries are worried it looks like women are losing some rights in this country. So what are we going to do? You know, what is the role of women in a democracy? I think that's the challenge to our younger generation. That is the challenge. As League of Women Voters, we go out and we talk to high school kids, college kids. We talk to people in marginal communities and we challenge them. Don't sit back. Your vote is as important as someone else's. So basically in shaping the future of democracy, it's a challenge. What are you going to do?
So I love what you said, that we are not our grandmother's vote, not anything close. So what I'd like to say, I came from a very big, close-knit family. We were all, my mother was a single mom, and I was raised by my grandparents. So this is actually something that I relate to intimately. So her attitude towards being part of the solution, as I mentioned before, I would go to her with a problem and she goes, okay, what are we gonna do to fix it? She cared less about what I was complaining about. She cared more about coming up with a solution together, no matter how minuscule. I'm being picked on at school. I'm not doing well in this class. Okay, what are we gonna do to fix that? And I think that's generationally, she taught me that. So I think it's our job to teach younger generations, teach below what we've learned to help continue the fight. Because at the end of the day, yes, very much the future. I know I'm starting my second career here, and I've learned so much from other students of a completely different age bracket from me. But I have a couple of my peers here in the classroom that I'd already hope that genuinely I've made an impression on you ladies to start with. But it's our job to teach proper methods. You don't go about certain things with violence. That's not the answer. Sometimes peace is the best way to approach this. And I think that if we don't participate, we're more part of the problem, is what my grandmother would tell me. She'd go, if you're getting picked on and you see other kids getting picked on and you don't stand up for yourself, then you're part of the problem. And as a child, I heard that and I went, that's kind of mean. That was kind of not really disrespectful, but it was painful to hear. And then I put that into motion. I would start speaking to the teachers about it. I would speak to other kids who were getting bullied about it. And then the biggest lesson that I learned from her was that I was not going to choose those who were bullying me to bring them continuously throughout my life. But I did learn from them how to be tougher. So now, when I'm in a teaching capacity, be it when I was in the service with my soldiers, I would teach them the core values, like do better today than you did yesterday. If you feel like you haven't taught the right lesson, if you feel like you haven't made the right decision, do better tomorrow. It's okay. You can fail. But don't down on yourself, because it's going to prevent you from doing better tomorrow as well. And no one's asking you to be perfect, but we're trying to achieve the best level of perfect that we can achieve for ourselves and for each other. So we have to be the leadership for that.
So I think there was a question before this that is, how can we encourage more women to run for political office and have their voice heard? And then this question, what role do women play in democracy? And I think that those two are really together. they permeate one another. And the reason I say this is because I think that we probably would see more women in office and willing to put themselves out there to run for office if there weren't as many double standards coming not only from the men in power and the general population, but from women themselves. So I'm going to echo some of these sentiments that you both said in saying that we need education. Education is powerful, knowing what issues are ahead of you and who came before you. So, you know, our grandmothers and our grandmothers' grandmothers, you know, since the dawn of the American Constitution and the American dream, there have been women that have come before us that have fought very hard for the rights that we now have today. And going to our Constitution and thinking of the preamble, a more perfect union. So we are striving to become better than we were before. And that takes education, that takes access, and that takes representation. So it is going to be a little bit more difficult to see more women in politics because we're not always represented. And so there are far fewer women, you know, than there are men in these positions of power. And I would encourage all of you to think about leaving the ladder down or reaching your hands down. A big thing for me is lifting others up. So I, you know, oftentimes in my career, there have been things where it's been like, okay, this is kind of a competition. It's me versus them. Where actually it isn't. We are not trying to compete for the same thing. As Leann said before, you know, there are very few spots that women can take, and instead of tearing each other down, why don't we lift each other up? Or if you're in a position of power, reach your hands down, leave that ladder down, make it more accessible for the next group. And in my opinion, the way to do that is education and support. Offering, you know, just an ear to listen, or hey, you don't know how to do that, let me show you, leaving that door open.
I also feel that it's a matter of encouragement, and which is a form of support, obviously, along with what Morgan said with education and everything. And it isn't just the younger generation. You would be surprised how many friends you have that are not registered to vote that are older. It's a conversation worth having, saying, hey, are you registered to vote? It's not too late. You know, it's super easy, super quick, and you can get a mail-in ballot if you don't want to wait at the polls. I just convinced my one friend who is 41 to get a ballot to vote. And she's never, you know, she's never registered until just recently, like 3 days ago. And I've been trying to convince her for forever, and she's finally got it. So I'm just like so excited. But it's one of those things where it's like some people have fear of the polls, some people have fear of timing against the poll, like timing to go to the polls, or, you know, they don't want to look into the candidates, they don't want to do different things. And when you tell them how easy it is, that, oh, this is the website, and you like hand feed them, this is Donald Trump's website, or this is Kamala Harris' website, or this is the website that you can go to compare the two, or whatever. Like, they just are like, oh, okay then. Like, if you spoon feed it to people right now, the first time, it helps them. And then the second time, you don't necessarily have to do that. And that makes it easier for them to be like less afraid and more willing to do it. And especially women who have been in other maybe abusive relationships or things like that, that they didn't have that freedom to choose who their candidate was or something like that, because that's something else to think of. But I mean, it is a matter of education and getting it out there. We've been running different things with the help of Nikolai here about, trying to show, the different sides of the candidates and things. And people just need to be shown that more, I think. But women really also do need to, what Morgan said, help each other and be more friendly and kind to each other. And, that is something that could really help in politics. That women are resourceful, women are very practical, and they're more practical than men realize, I think. And because that those double standards of they're too emotional or things like that tend to override it. So I think that that's something that would really help in the politics of getting women involved overall.
I think our role as women, it's vital. Statistics, and we can see through data that women have registered and voted at higher rates than men in every presidential election since 1980. And as they said before, encouraging one another. While I was running my first campaign ever to become county commissioner, I was told in the very beginning that a woman usually is asked 7 times to run for office before she says yes. So I didn't know, that women needed that extra, do you really think you want to run for office? And in my case, when the campaign began, I was approached by some commissioners that were stepping down from the commission board. So my story began that way. I was never really into politics as thinking about it as running as a candidate. I became more involved civically as a poll interpreter. That's how I began learning the different forms of government and understanding, because as they said, knowledge is power. And if we don't understand what the different forms of government are here, then a lot of times we can be discouraged in wanting to become part of the voting process. But once we learn a little bit the different facets that there are to government, we will then understand why it's important to vote. And in order to keep that democracy, our vote is our voice, as we say. So encouraging other women to run for office. I think once one of us runs for office and you can see the support they get from other women, whether they are in an elected position or not. I got support from both, from women that were in the political realm and men that were in the political realm, and many others that were not in the political realm. Because in order to run and win a campaign, it's not easy. It's, there's a lot to it. It's not an easy process. But I think sharing, I'm a true believer in sharing your story. And once you share your story with another person, I think that helps a lot in motivating them to want to run for office. And we plant our seed, right? We can put our 2 cents in order to change and shape the future for our children. The other thing I wanted to point out, like when Mary initially said we want to challenge the younger folks or the folks that have not registered to vote, is what role you would like to play in democracy. And as we have said all here, it's so important to vote, not only this election, it's every election. The more you get out to vote, the more you learn about the process. You can share that with your peers and your family and convince them to vote. And that's when, they say you can double and triple your vote and make sure that the rights for your children and your grandchildren are protected in the future. And ways we can become involved, there's many volunteer opportunities in our communities, different organizations, For example, here at Northampton Community College and civic engagement piece that they have. That's how you get involved. You know, it's just a matter of asking questions. How can I do this? Or how can I become more involved so I can learn the process of voting? And once you understand that, you know, the rest will come as you go. Now, we don't know it all. This is a learning process. There's a learning curve to everything. And the political realm and our government is that. You know, you learn piece by piece. And when you become an adult, who knows, you will be the next, you know, the future senator or the future congressperson. So don't let that seem too high, right, for you to want to someday want to run for office.
I'll keep it short. A lot has already been said, but basically I'm looking at this as, you know, someone who's about to turn 40 with a 4-year-old and thinking about everything I do and say in front of her and everything she sees matters. These are her formative years. She soaks it all up. So every time we go by a construction site, if she sees a woman, I point that out. If she sees a female police officer, I point that out. If she sees Kamala Harris running for president, I point that out. So I think it's from, you know, women getting themselves educated about what's on the line, but also knowing that from my perspective, there are certain things only a woman can truly represent me on. There are certain things I've experienced that I would not accept a man making a decision about because he will never understand. I mean, only recently have we started studying women's bodies separately, other than males' bodies in the medical field. We don't understand. Only recently are we looking at things like tampons having metals inside of them, and that would be something that my daughter would have been exposed to. So there are real issues that are on the line that have impacted me that I will make sure my daughter is aware of when it's an appropriate time. But voting in all elections, voting in local elections, that the local representatives are the ones who are going to be able to speak up for you, not just presidential elections. And much like I teach my students when they're writing in remedial level English or in English 101, your voice matters. It doesn't have to be perfect. You have that voice. You're entitled to speak up. You are entitled to say, cast your vote for what you believe in. And so that's what I think is important to do. That's how this democracy was formed.
All right, we have one more question before we're gonna open up to audience. I ask everyone keeps it about 30 seconds to a minute or less. So we're actually gonna start with Leann.
Okay.
How can we engage younger generations in the fight for gender equality and voting equality?
Wow. I think what's really interesting is when I was a kid in elementary school, I remember Ross Perot was running, and we had a little ballot box, and we learned how to vote. We made pins and we put them on our shirts and that sort of thing. And I thought it was very cool. I felt so mature. I felt like I was being involved in this process. It was so much larger than myself, even though, I mean, it was just my little elementary school. But that was done in elementary school. And then nothing really was done until it was time for me to register to vote. So my husband and I were talking about these questions, and he said to me, you know, what if it was mandatory to register to vote, like they make the young men get registered for the draft? And what if, I said, what if, because I look at it from an accessibility standpoint, what if everybody was given a mail-in ballot to provide access to everybody? So we made it like it's right there. It's so available for you. And that way the barriers have been taken away for a lot of different reasons for people so that they can cast that vote and that they can speak up and start getting involved in the process. You don't need to know every little thing about women's rights. You don't need to know every little thing about human rights to be involved in this process. Much like we require people to do jury duty, I think voting is your civic duty. It is a right to do. It's not just a privilege. So I think that this is something that, you know, young people are really informed about major issues right now. That is one of the huge benefits of the young people. They want to speak up. They are fighting for climate change. They are fighting for all kinds of issues that even my generation was like, yeah, this stinks, but we didn't have the platforms. We didn't have social media. We didn't have all these things to connect with people around the globe. And they're doing it at such young ages. So I think that they have that voice and they have that power and that energy and the gumption. And I think that they're able to do it. But if we help connect more of the archaic way that things have been done for so long to their energies, it's going to happen. And I think that, if we reinforce it at school where everybody has to go through from a young age up until high school, matriculating, that's probably one of the best ways to connect. And then having mock voting, perhaps having some situation where it does take away some of that anxiety at the polls, knowing where your polling place is, all that stuff is another barrier. So that's why I thought maybe if we send a mail-in ballot, get an absentee ballot, it takes away a lot of those questions and people are far more likely to just drop it in the mail. I mean, I know professors who are even offering extra credit just to show that you voted either with your mail-in ballot or your sticker that says I voted. So I have a lot of hope for this next generation. I think that they're going to do a little bit better than my generation. Thank you.
Of what Leann said, I believe it starts at home. We are, and then it continues into our schools. We are our parents and we're the first educators for our kids, right? Our children imitate a lot of what we do. And if we begin talking to them about the voting process and why it's so important and how they can shape the future and be a voice and be an advocate when they become adults, I think we can instill that in them. Unfortunately, I can't say that was my story. I didn't grow up with my parents saying this is, why you should be voting and this is something important. And even though we do have an electorate process in Puerto Rico, my parents were just never really involved. So it wasn't until I was an adult that I really became interested in learning all of this. So it's never late. It's great that there is a younger generation interested in learning the process. But if we can start teaching our kids or somehow get this, into our schools and make sure that our teachers at some point, because we have a lot of good teachers that, and you don't have to get political as to one party or the other, civic engagement, just go down to the basics, to why and how, and I'm sure our kids will learn that and will take that on into the future. And just keep reminding that if we want to see representation that looks like us or that looks like you in these different offices and make those decisions on your behalf, then you have to be the one to vote them into office. And just as we have that power, we have the power to vote them out. They come around again, and if we're not happy with that person or that elected official, then you vote for another person. And if there is not another person, then start looking for someone that you can encourage and say, hey, you should run for, I think you would be a great candidate to run for this office.
I do remember going with my parents to vote. I very vividly remember them doing like the little poll tab things and all that stuff, voting. I thought it was the coolest thing. I wanted to do it. My parents were like, don't touch it. I only get one vote. Don't touch it. Yeah, so, and my kids have come with me to vote. So they've seen me vote. It's a thing. They've been dragged along. They don't get the sticker. They get upset because they don't vote. But I think that it is something that needs to be done in schools for sure. Vote for Oreos for snack or Chips Ahoy for snack, do it once a month. Do it easily, it's something that you can teach in a ballot box. Something you could teach in first grade every year, second grade, third grade, fourth grade. Remind the kids how to do it. It's something easy and quick. That is a simple reminder. You can teach campaign posters when they're older. It is something that is important for sure, that needs to be taught, and I think it needs to be taught every year.
I'll skip ahead. A lot of this stuff has been said, so for the sake of your time.
Awesome, thank you. Yep. So this question actually kind of ties into women running for political office. I do have extensive experience in that. So it is understandable for why a woman would not want to approach a political office, or in my case, a leadership position. I was all about it, got my paperwork signed. All of a sudden I put those stripes on and I was looked down upon. I was 25 years old with rank of sergeant on my chest, and I was dealing with lower enlisted soldiers beneath me who had been doing this same job on the civilian side. Day in, day out, and they were in their late 40s. And part of my task was to be their leader. So the direct response that I had was I respected their experience and they respected my rank. And then I was able to put that information to my girls. I protected my girls as if they were my children. I protected all of my soldiers as if they were my children. But I fell on my sword hundreds of times especially for my girls. Don't you dare talk to my girls like that. Looked at her like, what? You did what to her? Excuse me? And I'm a very loud and boisterous person, naturally, but I probably raised my voice maybe 4 times in the service. So there are a few points that I wanted to make. So coming from a household with a single mom and really incredibly strong examples of strong women in my family, their leadership came from their natural motherly instincts. That leadership is in our blood. We just don't see that as being a leader. That level of confidence comes from you being able to teach. Same thing goes for running for a political office. If you can teach and you can prove and show, because I had to work my behind off to prove to my soldiers that, you know what, I am competent and I am fit to lead you. And once they saw that, it became contagious. And my girls would come to me, above me or below me in terms of rank. And they would come and they would ask me, they would field questions off of me. How would you handle this situation? How would you handle that situation? But you have to create that rapport throughout. Another thing would be encourage, not discourage. We have to instead of being so negative all the time, try to come up with a positive solution. Turn whatever direction you want to go in around. And when you advocate for yourself, you're also secretly advocating for all women. And that goes under healthcare. It's not just a political issue. It's everywhere. If you don't advocate for yourself, if a doctor is telling you, oh no, you'll be fine, when you know you're not going to be fine, speak to the patient advocate. Because now any other human in that position is going to treat another human differently. Be the example. I have no problem being the example. Like, I'll be the control group. Sure, no problem. Experiment on me so that other people behind me don't suffer the way I have. And one thing to close with from my end and my experience, your empowerment from your education, okay? Your vote is a choice. That is your way to choose, if you think of it like that. But I will say, be careful where your information comes from, okay? Part of teaching the next generation is explain to them that places like social media, like TikTok's not a viable source. You know what right? Verify, trust but verify all the time, because a huge part of education is getting the proper information. Because if you are getting misinformation and disinformation from all these other external sources, you say to yourself, okay, now I can make an educated decision. Not really, you can't. Education is only as strong as the source. So if we are verifying what we are teaching our children and what we are teaching those below us, and it's perfectly okay to go back and say, wait a second, let me double check. Because I used to do that all the time. I would pull out the reg and I'd be like, okay, is that really what we're supposed to be doing? Yes or no? And then we would move on from there. But there's that level of confidence that it's our responsibility to make sure that we lead the next generation to the right information, not information that's biased based on someone else's opinion and how someone else feels. Learning how to separate the difference between removing the emotion from your vote and putting the facts into your vote. So yeah.
I'll be really quick. What I didn't mention to you when I talked about my background is I was a teacher for a number of years, and I spent 16 years on boards and commissions in local townships. So I come at this with experience of teaching, experience being involved in government, and 10 years with the League. And what I see is, I agree with so many people, it starts at home. Parents should not be afraid to discuss issues with your kids, even if it's something as simple as, you know, our sidewalks are cracked and it's dangerous and somebody's going to trip. Explain to them how you would fix that. If you would go to the city, or you would go to a township. A lot of people don't know who to go to when they have problems, so that can start in the home. Second of all, and that's my background as a teacher, I think we need to support teachers and librarians. Preach right now. Because what we need to make sure is happening in the school is that there is an exchange of ideas, an exchange of discussions, and interactive civic lessons. And so often I've seen this happen in some schools where when we're getting close to PSSA tests, the principal would say, drop science and social studies and have a second class of math for the next 2 months, just to make sure our scores are up. That hurts our kids. I will tell you, one time in 8th grade, we did a presidential election. I let the kids bring in posters from both sides. They had debates. They had so much fun doing this. They voted on the Monday before election day. And I told them the results at the end of the day. It was announced over the school. They were so excited 2 days later because their results exactly matched the national averages. You never saw 8th graders so excited. That's what we have to do. We have to get kids excited. And other things we have to do is we have to talk about misinformation and disinformation, teaching our kids how to verify, whether it's in school or at home. You know, when I watch these commercials, I could just scream. There is so much disinformation and misinformation coming across our airwaves, coming across our social media. We have to teach that. We have to rebuild trust in government. And one thing that I've been starting to use as a League person who goes out and speaks to group is storytelling. Storytelling is becoming very big because when you can tell a story of something that's really happened to someone, it leaves an effect. And if we had time, I'd tell you some stories, but we don't. But storytelling is effective. It's very effective, and it's something that I do use when I go out and speak to high school and college kids. So yes, let's support our educators.
All right, thank you. We will now field questions from the audience.
Probably have time for 2 or 3. I'm not sure if this is in most elections, but for the presidential election, there's a huge gender gap. More women support one candidate, more men support the other candidate. I suspect that's the case in many elections, but definitely presidential. I'm wondering, what can women do to help close that gap so that more men are voting the way the women are voting? I happen to think the women have wisdom that men may not have.
There's a diplomat.
In general. So anyway, how can women influence men? Because I got an image earlier when someone was talking about women not always being free to choose the candidate they wanted. And my first thought was, sorry for this quick digression, but I was thinking, well, it's a secret ballot. And then I thought of mail-in ballots, or just even in a secret ballot situation at the polls, you know, are some women intimidated by their partners into voting for someone they don't want? So, you know, I'm sure that's happened. I haven't heard any stories from any individuals, but so I'm thinking, well, how can women have some influence in healthier ways? Obviously, I don't want anyone answer that you're going to intimidate someone physically or anything. So just wondering what the panel thinks about that. Leann has her hand up, basically.
Yeah, so for anyone who wants to answer, we'll just have you say that you want to be the one to answer. So Leann.
Yes, I'm like dying to answer this question. My husband and I are pretty closely aligned. Shockingly, if anyone's ever met my husband, you know we're quite different, very different people. However, the storytelling, the lived experiences part, I'm extremely open with my husband about things that I go through, whether it's my medical experiences or just those that are lived from a female perspective. Like I said earlier, we have traversed incredible paths together, including a miscarriage with my ectopic pregnancy. Never once did he say something about, I think you should do this. I needed pharmacological intervention so that my tubes didn't rupture and I didn't die. We talk about what that would look like today. We talk about what that would look like if we had lived in another state. We talk about going through IVF and when there was a temporary ban on IVF and what that would have looked like for us as parents or wanting to be parents and never being able to get there. We talk about that stuff constantly when things change, when the pendulum shifts back and forth from one end to the other. And we talk about it with our friends. We talk about it with people who are truly our friends. And we share those lived experiences so that people know from both a male and a female perspective what that's like. And my husband is very clear with his friends that he doesn't feel like it's appropriate at all for him to make that decision for someone else, that he would never be in that position and that he doesn't feel that it's right. My husband has a lot of opinions about a lot of things. And so that is really interesting for them to see that he's like, Leann has gone through this, Leann has gone through that, pretty much any of those things. And, you know, going through labor and delivery, going through all those decisions that you make, going through the decisions with my multiple chronic illnesses and what I experience. He's like, it's your body, it's your choice. And I think that that's important. Everybody who knows me knows I am a complete open book and I share those willingly. I'm not saying everybody needs to, but I think by sharing it with my brother, my stepbrothers, my stepfather, any man who knows me well enough that it bears explaining to some degree, whatever you're comfortable with, I think that's really important for them to know, oh, this impacts sisters, daughters, granddaughters, nieces. They should know. It might not impact you, but it impacts the people that you love. And if you don't want them to have these things taken away and their autonomy taken away, maybe you should reevaluate some of these issues and what you think these people each represent. So I think that's the most powerful thing, is to come up with maybe some sort of sympathy if they can't have empathy, try to develop that understanding with people, and then maybe have them just rethink what it is that they're talking about. Because if I hadn't been able to choose the medication when I had that pregnancy, I could have died instead of having just a traumatic miscarriage instead. So either way, it wasn't a good outcome, but it was the safest outcome for me. So I could still be around for my daughter and my husband.
Thank you. Anyone else on the panel specifically want to answer that question?
I would say in the Latinos households, culturally, our husbands sometimes depend on us for information or reliable information. Just as we maneuver, right, we multitask and do a lot of things. And how much Tylenol do I have to give, you know, Eli, for example, my son Eli or my daughter Eliza, you know, they rely on us for valuable information. So I think even though it's maybe an added responsibility for us to be well informed, but if we can impact, and my husband and I may not agree on everything, but when it comes to politics and you know, these important issues, he does take my opinion into account. And then he shares, you know, what I speak to him about with his friends and his peers. So I think that's very impactful, at least. And I can say again, in the Latino household, that's how it usually runs. The man is the working person, and women, we work as well, but they do take into account what we have to say and make their decisions based on the same as we do.
Would anyone else like to ask, or would anyone like to ask the final question of the panel?
Can I make just a comment real quickly?
Yeah, make a comment.
So about the question about what can women do about democracy, I think one of the main things is for everybody to realize that it's at stake. You know, I mean, I'm sure all of you probably agree with that, but I mean, I didn't really, in my bones, in my guts, I didn't really realize that. You know, you hear, you know, every generation has to stand up for democracy. Well, growing up, I never saw anybody having to stand up for democracy. It was just there. It was our great good fortune. And I didn't realize in my bones until like 2016. So it really can be at stake. And you know, we've seen the growth of authoritarian regimes in various parts of the world could be at stake here. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Vincent, for letting me.
That's all the time that we have. I'm sure some of you are going to stick around, but I really want to thank our amazing panelists for taking the time out of your busy day insights. We hope that you'll join us and continue to join us for more of our civic engagement related events throughout the rest of this semester, leading up to the election, which is not that far away. We're only weeks away now. And today's theme, National Voter Education Week, has a different theme each day. And today's theme was actually getting to know the folks who are running on your ballot. There was some of that conversation had today. So I just want to plug vote411.org, which is run by the League of Women Voters, which is a nonpartisan voter guide. It's a great way you can enter your address and you can see all the candidates that will be running on your ballot. It's not just Kamala Harris and Donald Trump that's at stake this year, right? We have Attorney General, Auditor General, State Treasurer, State House races, some state Senate races, a US Senate seat, and all of your congressional US House seats. So make sure you're paying attention to where the candidates stand on the issues. And our NCC Votes team is here to provide nonpartisan information for students all the way up until Election Day.
Can I add something to what you
Sure.
said? The Morning Call Voters Guide is going to come out mid-October, and that's one of our most valuable publications. But the Morning Call only gives us so much room. So if you want to get a fuller picture of a candidate's bio and where they stand, go to Vote 411. There, they're sent a survey from us, and they're asked questions and they fill it out and you get a longer bio. So if you really want to get a feeling, go there. And if you see, and I'm just telling you as a if you see that a candidate has not answered, it's not because of us. We send one email, we send a follow-up email, we call, and we send another email. So if they don't answer, and we always tell candidates, we hear people say, if you don't answer, I'm not gonna vote for you. So just so you know, if you see empty slots, it's because they chose the candidates just not to answer. So just how to put that plug in.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, thank you. There's still food, so please take it with you because I don't want it to go to waste.
And just a reminder,
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Leann.
Bye.
tomorrow we have policy polls. Yeah, and then the day after that, we have voter trivia. Are they all at 11?
They're all at 11.
They're all at 11. This is the hour of action.
Like a prize. Yay for the League of Women